Okay, guys, apparently I speak really fast. I, I don't realize. So tell me if I'm speaking too fast.
Yeah, who said
My
that?
husband, he's like, positive criticism. You speak a little fast. But especially this topic is really complex. There's three parts to it because there's so many reasons why we feel unsatisfied in life. And that can go into like why we feel unhappy, why we feel empty. There's a lot of things. Originally, the title was why do we always like feel empty, and I was like that sounds really depressing, so I was going to say more like why do we feel unsatisfied with everything that we do, even when we're when we have good circumstances. Sometimes we're like, okay, there's still like a void, there's still like this emptiness going on, and we don't really know the reason why.
Do we get a toolbox?
Do you get a toolbox at the end? Yes, you get a toolbox always. It's not a printout, but I'm gonna try to like incorporate like printouts so that we have these things saved. That's why you guys need to come in person. Okay, so the first part, we're gonna start with a story, and then I'll kind of go into the points, and we'll connect everything at the end, like I always do. This specific one is a little bit more complex, so if you guys like have any questions or something's not clear, you can just ask me. So we're gonna start with a story, and this woman was trying to get from Brooklyn to Queens. And so she gets in the car, she starts driving, and she realizes that she needs to get gas. So she stops at a random gas station and she gets gas, and she gets back in the car, gets to Queens, goes into her meeting or wherever she needed to be, gets back in the car, and she tries to turn on the car. The car doesn't turn on. So she's like, okay, what's going on? That's so weird. And so she calls the towing company and she says, listen, my car's not turning on. I tried everything. So the towing company takes the car, and they later tell her that she, by accident, filled up the car with diesel gas instead of regular gas. I always get scared that that's going to happen to me. But so she ended up doing that. And what happens is that it ruins the engine because she got the wrong fuel. And so while it got her from point A to point B, the car still ended up breaking down, so it was fuel, but it just wasn't the right fuel. And so we can connect this to life when we sometimes fill up the wrong fuel, and so we think that we're getting the right energy from a certain thing, but what ends up happening is that it keeps us going through life 1 month, 2 months, a few weeks, but at the end of the day, we end up breaking down at some point and we become unsatisfied with our lives. We still have a void, and we're like, okay, how do we deal with these things? And so the fueling stations that we have in our lives are different things, but specifically friendships. So we have friendships and we have activities. So I'll give you an example. If you feel like you had a really hard day, or you're dealing with something really challenging, what do? We usually try to escape it. And so we turn on Netflix, we take off our shoes, turn on Netflix, Netflix and chill with your husband. And then what happens temporarily, it gets you through the next week, it gets you through the next month, but then that void comes back again. And then we do the same things, or we go shopping and we buy ourselves something. And so we always choose these activities that are really the wrong fuel to fuel our inner beings, right? And so even friendships, while it's something really great that we connect with other people, and it gives you a really good feeling inside, at the end of the day, then we become dependent on those people, and so it's still the wrong fueling station. And so the big $1 million question is, what is the right fueling station? And of course, it's connecting with Hashem and having the Torah and the spirituality that some people just don't have. They don't look into it, they don't discover the religion enough to be like, okay, this is missing. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, what is the right fuel for our inner beings. And so I want you to imagine coming home and you're starving. What's the first thing that you do? You open the fridge and you literally eat whatever you see, right? And you not only eat it unhealthy, but you eat it in an unhealthy way. So what that means is that you'll eat it like very messy, very quickly. And what happens is actually medically and biologically, your digestive enzymes don't have enough time to even, the saliva doesn't have time to digest or break down the food properly. And so you're eating it in an unhealthy way. And so what's happening? You're getting the fuel, but you're getting it in a wrong way. And so in the same way, this is what we do when we're hungry. When our souls are starving, what do? We still do the same things. We go shopping, We hang out with a friend, we drink a nice glass of wine at night. And while those things are really good, they're not the main fueling station that we need. We need to back up and say, okay, hold on. What is the real meaning of life? What am I doing to make myself better every day? It's not going shopping with a friend. It's not, speaking to a friend on the phone. It's not, Netflix and chill. It's not drinking. It's not gambling. And it's all of those things that we use to escape, right? To escape our issues, to escape our challenges, because we have such an issue with dealing with confrontation. We have an issue with dealing with that emptiness. And so we try to escape from it, right? And this happens constantly. It's a vicious cycle. And so the real fuel that really can get us through those tough moments and those tough days is really connecting with Hashem and seeking Torah, seeking the truth. And a perfect example is when you come to the shul, for example, when you leave the shul, so you feel like, okay, like I got something, like I filled a void, and it doesn't feel like Netflix. It doesn't feel like going shopping with a friend, and then after you get home and you're like, oh, like that's all I bought. Like that's, it's going to get you through 1 day, 2 days, and then you get over it. But when you do shurim constantly, you're feeding your neshama that's starving, but you're feeding it in the right way. It's the right fuel. It's not the diesel gas. And so I want you to think about examples of how you make your life meaningful every single day. So the right fuel means when you wake up, you say modani, right? You're putting meaning into just waking up. You're not even doing anything yet. The first thing you do is already you give meaning to your life. Modani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shechazata bi nishmati b'chemna rabba emunatecha. Then you wash your hands to take away impurity, because during the night, you're sleeping and your hands become impure. And so you clean your hands, right? So you're putting already meaning into having clean hands so that you can do the work of Hashem. Every time you eat, every time you drink, you're making a bracha, right? And so I actually learned this. It was such a cool study because I talk about health and wellness, but specifically when you look at something, they say when you make a bracha on a certain fruit or any food, you have to look at it first and then say the bracha. So if you're eating an apple, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz. And when you're looking at the apple, actually your eyes give a message to the brain that you're about to eat something. And so the digestive enzymes start working beforehand, and that creates a really good digestive flow. And so it's unbelievable that every single detail in our life, Hashem has a purpose, even for the smallest things like eating. And so when you start fueling yourself with the right type of fuel, which is, saying a bracha before you eat, just incorporating all these little things and that type of purpose into even the smallest details, you're not coming home hungry anymore. You're not starving your neshama. You're having snacks on the way. So I heard always, don't come home starving because you eat in an unhealthy way. You open the fridge and you're like, what should I eat now? And then you eat unhealthy and you eat it in an unhealthy way. But when you're having snacks along the way, you don't get home starving anymore. And so not only are you getting the right fuel, but you're getting it in the right way. So again, the one fuel that will unchangeably empower us always is the fuel of Hashem and our connection with Hashem. So this is part one, where we don't feel satisfaction because we reach out to the wrong fuels in life, and we get confused with which fueling station is the right fueling station to make us more satisfied. So that was part one. So when you think about, I think I mentioned this already. So I want you to hold that part one, and then I'm going to connect everything at the end. But we said part one is finding the right fueling station, not fueling yourself with diesel, but fueling yourself with the right fuel in order to feel more satisfied with your life, right? So how to make ourselves better and not just, Netflix and chill and reaching out for something that will make us escape the reality. So part two is we try to seek validation from others. And I'm sure everyone can relate to this, especially in these days where we have social media and there's so many distractions going on that we can't really focus on our real fulfillment, our real potential. And so when someone close to us, for example, you get a phone call and somebody's really upset with you and they start criticizing you, what's the first thing that you think? I'm a failure. You don't think what I did is a failure, because that's what they're telling you. They're telling you what you did. I didn't like what you did. You failed at this specific assignment. But what do you say to yourself? I'm a failure. You label your entire core being as I'm a failure versus what you did, something that you did was a failure, right? So we become very, very dependent on people's validation. And so while those individuals love you so much and they really care for you, what do we see? We only see the bad side. We see, okay, I'm a failure. I did something wrong. Like, something's bad and I'll never be able to be good at this and blah, blah, blah. We go into this like rabbit hole. And so it's to show you that the first thing that we think of, it makes us so dependent on the other person that we'll always be unsatisfied, right? We'll always be seeking validation from other people. And so our self-worth and our self-esteem is dependent on what this person think, or what that person thought of you 2 weeks ago, and that can constantly change. And so we're always going to be feeling unsatisfied with who we are. And this is why I say the fueling stations, it's very dangerous that we fuel ourselves with relationships and with friendships, because while it's amazing to hang out with friends and to connect with friends and have that mutual understanding and connection and support, at the end of the day, it's not the right fuel that will really help us grow and help us function, and not have us just seeking validation from other people. And so, like I mentioned, no matter what we do, we're going to be completely dependent on other people. And I'm going to give you an example. For those of you who are parents already, for those of you who aren't parents already, but you'll relate to this. But if you have a teacher calling you one day and she says, "Oh my gosh, your daughter is such a mitzvah girl. You don't understand what she did today. She helped out outside. She was building the sukkah and it was so hot and she really wanted to do the mitzvah. And I'm so proud of her." The teacher tells you this. What's the first thing you think? "Oh my gosh, I am the best mom ever. There's no one like me," right? Because all it took was somebody giving you a compliment, right? So right away, your self-esteem boost. Right away, the validation from others boost. But then what happens 2 hours later? Your neighbor calls and she says, "Your son just spit on my face. I can't believe it. What type of education did you give him? What type of parent are you?" And then what happens? All of that self-esteem, all of that validation that you got from the teacher completely disappeared. And what are you now? A failure. You're the worst parent ever, right? And so we're constantly seeking validation from other people. And so that's why we're dependent on them for who we are. We're dependent on them to fill that emptiness, to fill that void that we're constantly trying to fill. So, how do we not have validation from people? How do we have our own self-validation? Oh, Lighthouse. Yes, I think it's a capital L. It might be, yes. Thank you. So it's very important to remind ourselves that we shouldn't rely on other people for our own validation. And the only way to get unconditional validation always and not depend on other people is to build a connection with Hashem. Because at the end of the day, whatever we do, and somebody looks at us, let's say from their perspective, they could say, "I don't like what you did." And so, but when you build that connection with Hashem, Hashem knows you best. He knows when we're praying for forgiveness and we're praying for an amazing year, Bezat Hashem, in Yom Kippur. So we say in one of the songs, it's Bochen Levavot. It means he tests hearts. Hashem doesn't test only action. He tests also what's in our heart. He knows what is really our worth, what is really our value in life. And so no other person, no matter what they say about you, whether you're a failure, you're a success, you're amazing, you're this, you should not depend on that for your self-esteem. You shouldn't depend on that for validation. And this is where we become unsatisfied again. This is where we start feeling emptiness again. The same thing goes for social media. And I was explaining this to my friend the other day. I said, you could literally have the best day with your kid. Like yesterday, I was like playing Lego with Gabriel all day. I was like, I'm literally like having the best time. Like, my life is amazing. And I was so grateful. And then I literally look on Instagram and like my friends like Punta Cana having the best time ever, like with their family. And I'm like, like we're constantly comparing our lives to other people. But even though I had the most amazing day, I see this person and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's wrong with my life, And it's like, why do we have to constantly compare ourselves to other people, right? So this is where the emptiness comes in, is that we're comparing, we're using the wrong fueling stations. And 3 is that we rely on other people for validation when we should build our own validation, our own self-esteem that's not dependent on what the other person thinks. And so how do we do that? Because it's very hard to do that. We're of course, we're very sensitive to what other people think about us. It's, it's the number one, like, of course, we're going to care about what people think. And so this is where we get to part 3, where my absolute favorite philosopher and rabbi and psychiatrist, Rabbi Twersky, he mentioned that you can be either two things in life. You can be ornamental or you can be functional. And I'm going to give you an example. You have a beautiful grandfather clock and suddenly it stops working. You can't fix it. Nobody can fix it. You went to every store. They were like, sorry, this is unfixable. What are you going to do? You're not going to throw it out. It's so beautiful. You're still going to keep it, in your house because it looks beautiful. So even though it doesn't have a function, it's still ornamental. It's still aesthetically pleasing. So you're going to keep it. But if you have a can opener and it stops working, you're not going to keep it in a frame and show it to everyone, like, look how beautiful this can opener is. It acts as a function. It's not an ornamental thing. And so you're just going to throw it out because you don't need it anymore. So you decide in life whether you're going to be ornamental or whether you're going to be functional. Do you want to just focus on your exterior to just look pretty and, be a trophy wife or be a trophy anything and, just focus on the external and feel that emptiness? Or do you want to be functional? Do you want to have a function? Do you want to have a purpose? And so we go through life, just thinking about the ornamental, thinking about the exterior. And, it's like, it reminds you of like on Instagram when for the 100th time you take a good family picture and you finally catch that good picture, but people don't see that you tried 100 times, right? And so, we're constantly trying to be ornamental. We're constantly trying to have a smile on our faces and, act like everything's okay, but it's okay to deal with your emotions. It's okay to deal with your challenges and be sensitive to those challenges and just go through the emotions. I was watching a TED Talk the other day and there was a woman who literally lost her father-in-law and her husband all in the same year. And she spoke about how to be emotionally stable and not rely on other people for, your success and to just work on yourself through grief and all those things. And she said, the only way to deal with difficult emotions is to get through them. It's that simple. And she that's all she said. And she was on a TED Talk. I was like, bro, but I was like, it's so true. It's that simple. You have to get through the tough stages in your life, and not through Netflix, not through shopping and buying yourself something, even though it feels good for the moment. It's the wrong fuel. Our engine is going to die off, in a few months from now, and we're not even realizing. And it makes us feel better, of course, no problem. I love How to Get Away with Murder, and it makes you feel good for the moment, but it's not really fueling me in the right way. It's not like watching a shiur by Rabbi Twersky. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And you feel that connection with Hashem that you can never feel through a show, that you can never feel through a new pair of shoes. And so there's a rabbi that mentioned the looking is the finding. And when we keep looking for the purpose that we have in life, what is our function versus just being ornamental and just looking pretty on Instagram and showing that your life is perfect, you'll find it. Because you know how they say there's some people who are scared of spiders and they have phobias of spiders, so they can see the spiders everywhere, right? Versus me, if I don't have a spider phobia, I literally will not find a spider on the floor because I'm not looking for it. Right? People who have phobias of certain things will find it way quicker than people who don't because they're looking for it. And in that same way, when you're looking for the function, when you're looking for, okay, what is my purpose? Why do I exist? And you ask those difficult questions, you end up finding it. And I want to go back because I think I missed a part, but if you look up at the photos of your grandparents back in the 1900s, right? You're looking at albums and you see they're not always smiling. Sometimes they're looking at the camera and they're like this, right? They're not and it's for a reason, because back in the 1900s, nobody had that ornamental need to always look happy. They were just fine. They were living in the moment. I realize that now. I'm looking at my grandparents' pictures. I'm looking at all these, photos from the past. They literally lived in the moment. If there was a camera taking a picture of them, they didn't care if they looked depressed. They didn't care if they looked anxious. They didn't care if they were just chasing a child and they looked horrible, because they didn't focus on the ornamental. They were like, okay, this is just a picture. Now someone's taking a picture of you. You're like, hold on. I need to put my hair down. I need to put my best smile and the filter. It goes on and on and on, right? And so even now, if somebody posts a picture of you and you look horrible, you're like, I'm never speaking to you again. Take that off right now, right? And so we have such a big emphasis on looking good and looking happy and everything's okay all the time, that it's like we don't sit and we're like, okay, I'm unsatisfied. What do I do? Let me sit with myself and ask myself those questions. Everyone is so afraid of confrontation. They're scared of confronting themselves, right? And so it's so funny. Rebecca, she's not here, but she was here last class. And I said, what should I do my next yoga about? She said, how to confront people. Like, people are so scared of confrontation. And so it reminds me now, this is one of the reasons why we feel unsatisfied, because there's so much to work on that we're afraid of working on. And so we focus on the wrong fueling stations. And this is where we get nowhere. It's a vicious cycle. And so Rabbi Twersky talks a lot about the pursuit of happiness, and this is, very relevant to also being, feeling unsatisfied. And he says that if you went back to the 1900s, to those grandparents in those photos, and you said, in 2000, there's not going to be any more meningitis, there's no more polio, there's going to be vaccines, you're not going to have to worry about infections, you're going to have laundry machines, you don't have to use the washboard, cooking is going to be easier, you're going to have a blender, you're going to have, everything that you can imagine that we have now, they would have been like, that's it. Like, humanity would have reached paradise if they heard that back then, right? Because they had to work so much harder than now. But why is it that now that everything is so much easier in 2020, everything is much easier. We literally have a solution for everything. And there has never been more prescriptions for antidepressants, anti-anxiety, all of these pills that, again, what do? They help us escape reality. There has never been so many issues with gambling, with drinking, with drugs, and by the way, Rabbi Twersky, who was a psychiatrist, he was dealing with people who were who were dealing with substance abuse. And so he knows a lot about, people trying to escape. He was talking about the fact that they just felt empty. And what did they do? Instead of reaching for the right fuel and listening to more Shiurei Torah and, focusing on getting better, they wanted to just escape. They wanted the easy way out. And so they didn't feel fulfilled with that. It made the pain go away for a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, but then it always comes back. And so I want to end with this because I don't want to make it too long or complex, but I'll connect everything at the end. When we look at the creation of the world, every animal was already created in completion. What does that mean? An alligator who is born just becomes a bigger alligator, okay? A bird just becomes a bigger bird. So all animals essentially, they change physically, but they don't have the spiritual, connection. They don't have the intellect that we have. We are the only species as human beings that have the ability to grow and to find purpose. Cows aren't like every day, eating the grass and like, how can I be a better cow tomorrow? They don't think that, we think that, and we're like, how can I be a better person tomorrow? And so we have to take that into consideration when we're considering why we feel unsatisfied, because animals, all they have to do is eat, graze the farms, maybe talk to each other through mooing or whatever it is, but there's not much more than that, right? They don't think, how can I be better tomorrow? And so because Hashem gave us that ability, it's clearly for a reason, because he wants us to reflect and he wants us to say, how can I be better tomorrow? What can I take on myself? What type of midot? What type of activities that connect me with Hashem can I do in order to have that spiritual connection and have that spiritual growth? And so you'll notice that, through your day-to-day life, it's not always going to be the case, but you'll have that nagging voice like, what is life? Sometimes my husband comes home and he's like, I don't know. Like, should I be studying Torah? Should I be working more? Like, he's always on the border of both of those worlds, because he's like, I want to study Torah. I literally want to go to synagogue right now and study Torah with the rabbi and study Torah with, all of the yeshiva boys. But then I'm like, I have another voice that says, no, I need to work and work and work and hustle and make money and make money. And so we're constantly on a battle with those two worlds, right? And so it never ends, right? It never, ever ends. And that's why I said, don't starve your soul. Take snacks along the way, incorporate Hashem in the best way that you can, as much as you can all the time, whether that's waking up and saying Modani, washing your hands, doing netilat yadayim, when you go to sleep, doing Shema, anything that can incorporate Hashem and make yourself more functional, this is where our satisfaction comes in. And so let's go over the three main things because I don't want it to be too confusing. So number one, we said, use the right fuel, right? So we have the fueling stations, which are relationships and friendships and activities like shopping or Netflix. But at the end of the day, it can get you from point A to point B, but it's not the right fuel. So the right fuel is what? Connecting with Hashem, being more spiritual, going to more shiurim, which we're doing now. So it's amazing. And number two is, did I just lose? Yes, validation from others. So we can't rely on other people to give us our self-worth and our self-esteem. There are too many people out there that I know that just don't have enough confidence. They don't have the self-esteem because one person said something to them 4 years ago that they were ugly. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, first of all, you're beautiful. And number two, that person you're probably not even in touch with, and we don't even know where he is at this point or where she is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because people are always going to have other opinions of you. Always, no matter what. Even if they don't know you or they just got in a fight with you, they're going to say she's the worst person ever because of one thing that you did. And so right away, what do you say to yourself? You label yourself. You're a failure. You're a success, or you're not good enough, and you want to stay a victim. And you're going to find excuses, right? Because we're always dependent on other people instead of relying on our own validation, number one, from Hashem, and to create our own ability to validate. So that's number two. Number three, choosing whether you're ornamental or functional. Do you want to just stay, looking beautiful and having your nails done every day? Great. That's amazing. You look great. But what's inside? Do you look as great inside? Are you functional? Do you have a purpose, right? Are you a grandfather clock, or are you more functional than that? And the third thing is being able to find the right purpose and asking yourself that question, right? And not just going through the motion. And just, sometimes I feel like, especially mothers, we're just like going through routine and like, we're just like surviving. And it's like, hold on. Did I incorporate Hashem today? Did I speak to my husband? Like, did we have a proper sit-down dinner? We're just going through the motions and we don't stop and like question ourselves. And that's where the unsatisfaction comes in. That's where the emptiness comes in. And so I'm going to end with a toolbox for Raquel. But I definitely always want to end with something that you can take home and work on, of course, because this is definitely something that everybody can relate to and something that everyone deals with, whether it's now, whether it's later, whether it was in the past. It's something that we really need to work on. So number one, don't ask yourself what your purpose is, because you can literally spend your entire life and not find out. Sometimes we don't know what our purpose is. Sometimes we don't know, it takes us a long time to get to know what we're good at or what really is our purpose in life. And sometimes really we don't know. It's not about what your purpose is, it's living with purpose. So it's two different things. When you're trying to find your purpose, you can literally just like sit around and just like talk to yourself and be like, hey, I don't know. And that's it. And it's over. So the toolbox clearly doesn't work there. You want to live with purpose. And like I mentioned, you want to have snacks along the way. You don't want to come home starving. And what does that mean? Living with purpose, putting purpose into your life every single day, which is whether, waking up and saying brachot, not talking lashon hara, which like I've seen, it's unbelievable how many people have been working on that this week. It makes me so happy. But it's working on things to better ourselves, because at the end of the day, that's what we were created for, right? So we want to live with purpose, not just question what our purpose is. And I want you to ask yourself, not what do I need in this world? What am I needed for, right? It's two different things. So I established that, Baruch Hashem, I was helping people through my shurim 3 years ago when I was doing shurim for my sister, the younger one. And I said, okay, what am I needed for? Maybe it's to motivate people. Maybe it's to, guide people in the right direction, because number one, I'm growing with you guys. But number two, I'm able to, grasp ideas and kind of like regurgitate it in a way where, it relates to you. And so ask yourself, what are you needed for? Do more chesed, ask around. Can I donate somewhere? Can I volunteer somewhere? I just joined Shabbat Angels. I don't know if you know, it's somebody from Hollywood. And they just started an organization literally, I think it was maybe 2 months ago, and they have like already 50 ambassadors, and everyone just wants to help. They want to fill the void, right? And so we see that when somebody wants our help, sometimes we run to help them because we want to feel that we're filling that void, that we're filling that emptiness. And that's the right way. That's the right fuel. And so you want to live with purpose. You want to ask, what am I needed for? So doing more chesed, volunteering. And you want to find your purpose in action. So I think this is kind of the same thing, but you don't want to just say, yeah, I want to be more purposeful. Okay, but where's your action, right? Always follow action, not just talk about what your purpose is. Ask what you're needed for, act on it. So if somebody says, we need a volunteer for X, Y, and Z, don't be like, oh, let me think about it, maybe. Yes, just say yes. Just go for it. Just do it. Just deal with it. And you want to review. So after you donate, after you volunteer, you want to, at night, instead of watching Netflix, you sit down and you say, was that the best use of my time? How did I feel after that? Do I want to donate again? Do I really like this cause? And then slowly because your life is now more purposeful and more meaningful, you're going to reach a point where like, okay, I'm good at this. Okay, I like this organization. Let's do more. Push yourself. Because if you're able to fill that void and you found that thing that helps you connect with Hashem through chesed or through donating or whatever it is, it's all chesed really at the end of the day, then you found that thing. It's the bingo where it's like, okay, now I'm able to fill the void with something real, right? Something functional, not just ornamental. And pay attention to your thoughts when we're talking about validation. So if somebody says, I saw your son the other day and he pushed some other kid. Pay attention. What's the first thing that you think? If it's right away, I'm a failure, I'm the worst mom ever, change those thoughts. I don't need the validation from that person. I know I'm an amazing mom because I bathed them yesterday. I took them to the park. I gave them food. Those people don't see all of those things. They just saw, okay, this kid pushed the other kid. She's the worst mom ever, right? And so do not seek that validation from other people, right? Build that validation for yourself. So pay attention to your thoughts. And even when it comes to positive criticism, of course, take it and build on it and let it help you grow. But don't allow it to give you the reputation that, is your self-worth. Don't allow it to be your self-worth and determine who you are, because nobody knows who you are but you. Nobody knows what you do behind closed doors. Some people donate anonymously, and then, the next day something can happen and that person can say he's the worst person ever. They don't know what they did yesterday. And so why do we heavily rely on the validation from other people? It's crazy to me that this is the reason why we're unsatisfied and we still really haven't pinpointed it. So you want to live with purpose. You want to ask, what am I needed for? So doing more chesed, volunteering, going out of your way for other people. And review, if that was a good use of your time, if you really enjoyed it, what can you do more? What can you do less of? Pay attention to your thoughts. So, if somebody's coming at you and telling you all these things, what's the first thing that you think? And try to change those thoughts. You've heard of neuroplasticity. I don't know if you have, but, your brain can constantly wire or rewire differently, to change your reality. You can always change your brain to think differently, and that's obviously the power that Hashem gave us. So, you can use it. And when you take all of these things, you'll realize that you'll no longer be dependent on other people. You've built such a strong connection with Hashem that no matter what happens in positive or negative circumstances, it doesn't matter anymore what people think of you. And, it reminds me when I originally was doing Sharone, it was very important for me that people will come after and be like, that was amazing. Like, that changed my life. It was very important for me. Of course, I wanted to see what people thought. Was I a good speaker? Did I really relate to them? Did I connect to them? Because sometimes you can speak and people don't really, and it's hard. You want to get positive criticism, and that's normal. That's completely natural. But we have to stray away from that a little bit and not let it, pull us down, because people's opinions always change. And, you know, somebody in the room today could be like, listen, I didn't connect with that shiur, but it's not going to make me feel like I'm a failure anymore, right? Because I'm working on myself and I know that I've helped somebody else, but I mostly know that I'm doing it to be a messenger of Hashem. I'm not doing it, you know, for other people. Of course, I'm happy that I inspire people, and then, you know, I'm able to teach people and guide people, you know, in a way where Hashem gives me the right words. But at the end of the day, I can't rely on just that, on just people coming to me and saying that was an amazing shiur. I have to just say, I'm a messenger of Hashem. And even if one person comes to the shiur, I'm going to be just as happy as if there was 300 people in the room. And that is real satisfaction with life. It's not reaching to friendships and, you know, going over to a friend and having wine. It sounds amazing, honestly. Like I love doing that, you know, like let's do wine night, wine and cheese. It's amazing. And, you know, I'm not saying don't build on friendships. I'm not saying, you know, spend quality time with your family and friends. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's a bigger picture. And if we just stop and try to really find purpose in everything that we do and not just escape, you know, the reasons that we feel empty and all of those things, then, you know, we can all come together and find purpose in everything that we do and find purpose in general so that we feel satisfied with every part of our lives. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to go on the chat here. Okay. Yeah, no questions on the chat so far. Was that too complex to understand? No. Okay. It was good? Yeah. Clear? Okay. Yeah.
Actually, the question. So we're talking about validation, right? So a lot of the validation I personally get is from work. Like,
okay.
That's my biggest validator. Like I don't even have social media. I don't care. So when my boss gives me criticism, I like go, how do you deal with like, because he's signing my paychecks, I have to care about what he says, but also he doesn't know me. He doesn't know how I feel. He doesn't know what I did, you know, with the things that, like, how do you deal with like the negative criticism from coworkers, negative criticism from bosses? Because literally that is actually important. Like, I think that is important.
Of course. Right. So like I mentioned, we need constructive criticism in life. It's not like, you know, I say ignore it and, you know, focus on just connecting with Hashem and ignore people think about you. Of course, if everyone's saying this person is the worst person ever, it means something, you know? So you definitely want to take that criticism. But my mom always taught me this. She said, don't take anything personally. Nothing, not from your friends, not even from your family. And I've held to that advice for a long, long time. And it's really gotten me to so many places, because when you realize, just like you mentioned, he doesn't know what you do at home. He doesn't know the type of person that you are. He only sees what you do at work. And so he only sees one dimension of you. If he were to see the entire picture and then he says something, even then, he still doesn't know the person that you are inside, what you're working on inside, what are the qualities that you're working on, what are the midot that you're working on. You know, even the closest people that are around you might not even know what that is. And so at the end of the day, when you realize that Hashem is the only person that is in charge of recognizing, you know, your worthiness and, you know, what value you give to the world, then you just realize that it's not as important, you know, and so at work, of course, it's important to listen to positive, you know, constructive criticism, and, you know, kind of see, you know, what angle he's getting at. But at the end of the day, work is just one dimension of your life. And when you realize that, then you realize that it's not all of you, and then that's it. And you don't need to take it personally. And I guess it's a type of work that we all need to work on. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did. Like,
it
taking
did.
things personally as far as like work stuff, because we spend so much time at our jobs, it's hard to make that disconnection.
Of course.
12 hours a day working, and then like it's so what are the other aspects? Well, if there's 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week you're working, there's really not that many other aspects. So
right.
It's like a personal.
Right.
It's so personal. But I agree. Like, you can't take businesses isn't personal. That's what they always say.
Right. And I also think, you know, I'm not saying personally your boss, but I'm saying in general, when you're speaking to a boss, they don't think what's the best for you, right? They think what's the best for the company. And so if you're going to have someone evaluate your self-worth, someone that doesn't really care about you, then, you know, there's a gap there, you know, like it doesn't, you know, it shouldn't matter as much as if it's like your mother who says, hey, you know, I didn't like that you did that, right? And so we have to prioritize who do we really listen to, who who do we let really hurt us, versus, you know, the boss at work that only cares about making money, and he's not really saying, it's not going to change his day if he says, hey, I didn't like what you did on this assignment, or you didn't do this really well, or you didn't present this in the right way. It doesn't really change who you are. It changes maybe what you did for that day. Like I said, he focused on the task, not really the person that you are. So I think it makes a difference. Of course. Any other questions? You have? Okay. Okay, perfect. No, I don't see any questions on the chat. So I'm going to close the chat. And then, guys, there's sushi here. It's from Crudo. It's really, really good. So enjoy. Yeah.